Okay, welcome back to Coast to Coast. Michael Fitzhugh Bell is the author of a story called The Invisible Crime, Chip Implants and Microwave Technology and Their Use Against Humanity, something that has happened to him. Michael, welcome to Coast to Coast.
George, nice to be here. It's nice to be back again. Thank you for having me.
It's been a while. So, let's go back and talk about your story, because your story is critical to the work you did, the invisible crime, and what might be happening to a lot of other individuals all around this planet.
I would say that, well, I'll just tell you my story quickly.
Okay.
Synopsis. I was living in Los Angeles for several years as an aspiring screenwriter, and I was just beginning to get the notice of top literary agencies and top studios that were beginning to be interested in my work when I became a targeted individual. And it started with organized stalking, which we'll get into a little bit later, hopefully. But what happened was this crime progressed and it culminated in me being drugged and abducted from an apartment that I had in Los Angeles. And I was taken from my apartment in the middle of the night while I was sleeping, drugged and abducted. I remember the criminals, I remember them wearing frightening masks at one point during the abduction, and then also I remember lying on an operating table with surgeons standing over me wearing surgical masks. And then I was returned to my apartment, where I woke up thinking it was the next morning, but it was a week later. And I noticed that my body was riddled with these corresponding and symmetrical tiny surgical incision scars all over my body, and I didn't really know what happened to me. So I consulted several private investigators, and I also spoke to an ex-CIA agent that all told me that what sounded like what was happening to me was that I was what is termed as a targeted individual, and there's a strong possibility that I may have been implanted with advanced nanotechnology biomedical devices. So I went to doctors around this country, and I couldn't get people to give me the imaging that I was requesting. So I literally had to travel around the world collecting medical evidence, MRIs, ultrasounds, X-rays, and all of them show these foreign objects directly underneath the scars, these covert surgery scars that I found in my body. And I include all these pictures in the book and all of the verified documented doctor's reports. And I also tell people where they can find the scars in their body and what they look like. Since I wrote the book, over 95% of the people that I've examined, whether they're targeted individuals, whether they're just regular people that are not targeted, or even the perpetrators, the criminals themselves, all of them have the trademark telltale pattern of covert surgery scars. Most of them don't even know that they're there until I make them aware of them.
Have you come up with the rationale, Michael, why you? And why so many other people, I guess, but why you?
It's never been made clear to me, George, why I was chosen, why I was selected, but I can tell you that I probably fit a demographic that would lend itself toward becoming targeted. I've never been married. I don't have any children. I was a writer that spent much of my time by myself in my apartment. So I didn't have a regular job that people would miss me at, and I don't have any pets. So I'm the perfect person to take, certainly to abduct, and I wouldn't be missed. People didn't miss me. I had a lot of phone calls while I was gone for that week, but not like as if I had a family and a job that were missing me and wondering where I was.
And you said that originally you tried to get doctors to get you the right tests so you could prove this or find
That's
this.
right.
They did not believe you, I take it.
That's correct. In fact, when it first happened to me, I was where I lived in Beverly Hills, in the Hollywood area in Los Angeles. I started walking the morning after it happened, which I thought was the next morning, but really it was a week later from the time that the first abduction that I had. I had many abductions, as I spoke of in the book, but I started going to the police station to tell them what happened, but then I realized that they're going to ask me, where's your proof? Do you have any proof? And I could still feel the remnants of the drug that they'd given me in my system. It was still very strong, and I figured if I went to the emergency room, perhaps I could get a blood test from what one of the private investigators that I consulted with told me to have a specific test for a drug called scopolamine, or devil's breath, which is often used for abductions because it gives the victim complete amnesia. But when I went to the emergency room and made the mistake of telling them the truth of what had happened to me, they locked me up. And when I was locked up in this psychiatric evaluation center for 2 weeks, that's where additional surgeries were done to me.
What do you think the intent and the purpose might be, Michael, for these microchipping?
Well, I can tell you that what's widely believed and reported to be is that these implants are allowing the criminals or the people that are in charge on the other end of this technology. These are classified technologies, George. These are not just regular everyday technologies. They're highly secretive, classified technologies, and it's believed that it allows the perpetrators the ability to view, monitor, track, harass, and torture the targeted individual, the victim, remotely.
Wow.
And also the ability. It's also believed that one of the technologies that's being used is what's termed as a bidirectional human mind to machine interface weapon system technology, in which brain decoding, information from the person's brain can be read in real time, as well as information being put back into that person's brain in real time.
A lot of people claim, Michael, that they're abducted by extraterrestrials and they're implanted with things as well. Is it possible that it's just being done by humans, by governments, and these people think it's an extraterrestrial event?
That's certainly a real possibility, George. It's very, very possible that the aliens story is being used as a cover and a cover-up to really hide what the government is doing to its own citizens. And the government has a long history of experimenting on its own citizens, going all the way back. I mean, especially with this program, if you look at the MK Ultra program,
yeah, exactly,
the CIA program, and this is back in the 70s, before it was shut down in the 70s. That involved microchip implants, trigger words, mind control, and that was nearly 50 years ago. And that program was shut down, but really, it really was never shut down. It went further underground, is what people believe.
How many microchips or implants have you had?
Well, I have the scars. Every place that I've had MRI'd or ultrasounded, and I had to travel all over the world, Europe, Mexico, Canada, all over the United States, traveling around collecting evidence. And I have over 250 of these tiny surgical incision scars, and most of them, the ones that I had imaged, show a foreign object. So I would imagine that it's quite possible that every single scar that I have has some form of technology in it, whether it's an actual biomedical device or perhaps even an antenna or some kind of transmitter. It's also believed that there's more than one type of implant that's being used. Seems to be a variety of implants that are being used, but what I wanted to say was the newest research that I have is quite frightening. It's now estimated that 50% of Americans have already been implanted with RFID technology without their permission, without their consent, and without their knowledge.
50%?
50%. That's what's estimated. 1 out of every 2 Americans, without their knowledge, without their permission, without their consent. And I can tell the listeners today that either don't know about this crime or don't believe in it, or...
So half my audience, you're saying half my audience has been implanted?
I would say certainly in my experience and all the people that I've examined, well over 95% of the people that I have examined since I wrote the book, hundreds of people all around the world, all have the same pattern of scars that I have, and it's believed to be what is known as, what the program that I'm in is what's known as an unacknowledged special access program, part of the Black Ops shadow government end of the United States government.
Jeez. When you were on with me 3 years ago with Roger Tolsis,
right.
we, he, of course, is a staunch believer that this has been going on. Why, in God's name, would they put 200 implants in you and chips?
I don't know why I have so many, but I would say that each targeted individual is being tested differently from what's alleged to be happening, and I have no idea how many different types of technology may be implanted in me, but it's also believed that part of the devices, some of them may be just antennas. They may be just small pieces of the technology to extend the more complex devices. And people, I have to tell you that these technologies are so advanced that it's difficult for people to comprehend the level of sophistication.
No, I agree, and believe it, because it is so out there. Most
right.
Most people, like your doctors, probably say, "Oh, we're going to put Michael away for a little bit."
That's right.
This technology that they've used, do you think this was done to control you? Are you a Manchurian candidate? Are they testing to see if they can make you do something one day? What do you think they're trying to do?
Well, I know that they're trying. From what I experienced. I experienced 3 aspects of this crime, and it has a lot of different aspects, a lot of different parts to it. There's the organized stalking, the electronic harassment, both which seem to lend themselves toward the antithesis of the program, which would be mind control. And since this has happened to me, I would have to say I've noticed that what's happening to me is noticeable, and I noticed the difference between the way I was before I became targeted and the way that I am now. And I would say that sadly, I exhibit some of the signs and symptoms of mind control.
I was going to say, what are some of those symptoms? Do you hear voices? Do you hear ringing in tones and things? What are they doing?
I don't get the V2K, the voice-to-skull technology, which is a proven to exist and work technology. That's a declassified technology. I don't receive that. I get I'm the victim of a different type of acoustic weaponry called subliminal silent sound presentation, which is not silent. I hear a very loud electronic sound constantly that's changing in pitch and in volume, and it's an electronic noise. It's nothing natural. But I would say that some of the signs and symptoms that I notice, a compulsion to look at the clock to see what time it is.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I do that, it is always exactly at the top or the bottom of each hour.
Wow.
Right down to the second. And also being woken up in the middle of the night at the exact same time every day. And also receiving the induced artificial dreams. That's another big sign of that mind control and mind conditioning is being deliberately imposed on me.
Are you a test, or are you the real deal that they're using?
I believe that I'm part of a massive field test and illegal clinical trial of human experimentation with classified
He's talking about a
technology.
tone, and if I were to guess,
really
I would say that it's
how
usually in the
far-
key
what it
of
takes
A.
to break the human spirit, the human mind, how long it takes to change a person, because in this technology, with this technology, you have something called trauma-based behavior modification. And by keeping the target, me, in a constant, frightened, anxious state, it's possible to, over time, subtly change the person's emotions and their urges. And by doing that, by changing a person's emotions and urges, you can actually control their mind.
This is just remarkable. Tell us this. Well, we're going to run into the break. I want to get the story of the implant that was in your jaw, Michael.
Yes.
But for people, well, here's the thing. You talked about symptoms. What are some of the other symptoms for people who think they may be implanted, to try to decide if they have them?
I can give you a couple of things. It's frightening. For people that have been are experiencing the signs and symptoms of mind control, one of the things to look for is you're being influenced to forget something, especially your short-term memory. You may be boiling water on the stove, and suddenly you get distracted and walk away from it. Or you're washing something in the sink, and you turn away and you leave the water running, and you forget. It's very dangerous what can happen to you. Your short-term memory is so impaired, so you really need to focus and make sure that those things don't become a problem. But that's a sign and symptom. Also, severe mood swings, and also here's one that I find that happens to me, is that when I hear a song, even if I'm walking through a store and it's background music, portions of that song or a commercial jingle will get stuck in my head for days, weeks, sometimes even months on end. Not a natural recall or memory. It's something that's being looped. Only a portion of the song will be heard repetitively over and over. That's another big sign of that mind control is probably being imposed upon you.
When you were kept for a few weeks, as far as in an institution, how'd they let you go? Think about that when we come back, Michael.
Get daily show updates right to your inbox for free with the Coast Zone newsletter. Sign up today at coasttocoastam.com.
Welcome back with Michael Fitzhugh Bell. His book, of course, is called The Invisible Crime. And, Michael, where do you get the book, by the way? Where is it available?
It's available at Barnes & Noble and on Amazon and through my website, www.invisiblecrime.com.
Okay. Now, is it safe or accurate to say that you were institutionalized?
Well, I was illegally detained. Yes, I was illegally detained against my will for no good reason at 3 different hospitals within a 6-month period, where additional surgeries, covert, illegal surgeries, were performed on me without my knowledge, consent, or permission.
Now, when you say without your knowledge, how could somebody cut on you and you not know that? What happened?
Well, they forced me while I was in the psychiatric evaluation. They told me that if I didn't take the medications that they were giving me, that I would be forced to stay there even longer. If I wanted to get out of there, I had to play ball, so to speak. So when I was taking certain medications that knocked me out or made me go to sleep, that's when I was taken to other areas of the hospital for the more complex surgeries.
How did you finally get out? Because you played ball?
Yes, I had no choice. I was originally... What usually happens to targets is they get in for a 72-hour evaluation, which usually extends into 2-3 weeks or even a month. That's what usually generally happens to all the people that are being targeted at one point or another.
Let's talk about this lower jaw implant that you had. Tell us about it. Why do you think it was put there? And then what happened to it? And by the way, we've got some pictures you sent us from your site at coasttocoastam.com that people can look at. They are remarkable. But go ahead, Michael.
Yes. Well, I as I said, I traveled around the world collecting the evidence that was overwhelming, that doctors around the world would see these. I had the scars, and I wanted that area MRI'd or ultrasounded. When you go to Europe, you can just command that. As long as you have the money, you can tell them, listen, I want to get an MRI of my face or of my hand, whatever you want. As long as you have the money to pay for it, they'll do that. In this country, you need to get the doctor to approve it. You need to get a prescription for that imaging, and your insurance may or may not cover it. But it's even if you don't have even if you have insurance, it's going to cost you a fortune. But what happened to me is I had my face MRI'd. And I include that image in the book, and you can see on the bottom of the image, it kind of looks like you can just see the face, and in the bottom, in the lower part, in the jaw, where the jaw is, you can see 2 on either side. You can see they're corresponding and symmetrical in their placement. 4 very dense, bright white objects. And that was before I had the one removed from my lower jaw. There was 4. Now there's only 3. I went to about 10 to 12 different ear, nose, and throat specialists to get this. I could feel it in the bottom of my. There's still other ones there too that I can feel. It was. It felt like around the size of about a half of a BB. The size of a BB, a very small. Maybe like a third of the size of a Tic Tac.
Okay.
You know what that is.
Could you feel it if you touched it?
I could feel it, and it was loose and floating underneath the skin. And I finally got one specialist who agreed to extract it. So I went in one day for the visit test to set up the extraction. And he said, sure, I'll take it out. But when I went back a week later to have it extracted, he was a completely different person. He was all business. And whereas he just thought he was going to take something out, obviously someone had contacted him and informed him of whatever he removes from me, I'm not allowed to keep it. Usually the chain of custody goes to the person who it's being removed from, whether it's a piece of glass or a splinter or a bullet, shrapnel, whatever's in that person, whatever's removed, the chain of custody, the ownership is the person it's being removed from. But in this case, the doctor would not let me keep it and insisted that it went to pathology, and it was where it was termed to be a mucoid formation. But before I left, he wouldn't let me keep it. He did allow me to photograph it. So I took several photographs, 2 of which are in the book, and you can actually see the tissue that attached to this foreign object, and it's smooth. it's not anything that came from nature. It's a smooth, oblong-shaped little dense object that all the nerve cells and the skin cells began to grow around, and in order to remove it, a lot of that tissue had to be cut out. So you can see in the image that it's easy to see where the tissue ends, and then this object, which I believe to be a biomedical implant, you can see where one starts and the other ends, and it's certainly not natural. And with the seriousness that the doctor, between the first visit and the extraction, you could tell that it was something very serious, and perhaps even his medical license or his life had been threatened if he were to allow me to keep it. It was of that much importance.
Did any of these objects get analyzed?
Well, they said they sent it to pathology, but and they told me it was a mucoid formation, but no. I also had another. To answer your question, no, they did not get analyzed or get confirmed, but it was removed, and I did get pictures of it. And I also went for another surgery in San Antonio, and there they just opened me up and closed me and didn't take anything out. And I believe that they may have actually re-implanted me with another implant during that procedure. So I came away from that, nothing taken away, and perhaps even at least one additional object implanted in me. So I haven't gotten one that was confirmed yet.
How close, Michael, do you think they need to get to you to continue to monitor you or harass you? Do they have to be like in a remote van somewhere following you, or?
That's a good question. I believe now, with the sophistication of these classifying technologies, that perhaps some people believe, it's widely reported, that they may be either cellular or satellite based, and in that case, I mean, wherever I go in the world, no matter how remote the area, my connection to the technology, to the frequency that's reaching me, and the frequency that's coming and going from me, has been unbroken since it was activated in 2008, and I can travel. I also receive electronic harassment or electronic attacks, and those can happen even while I'm on an airplane.
And what are they like? What happens?
Oh my gosh, these people don't understand the term electronic harassment really should be bioelectronic torture, because the electronic assaults are severe and brutal and extreme, sometimes causing me second and third degree burns in the area that I'm being targeted out on.
There are some people, Michael, that think and they have panic attacks. Might they be implanted and then something's going on that is, changing them emotionally that causes these?
That's an excellent point, George. Yes. Sometimes it's believed that through the implant process, it's possible to, as I said before, to influence a person's urges or their emotions. And sometimes it's possible that you suddenly will get overwhelming feelings of fear or terror and anxiety, especially when you're out in public or driving a motor vehicle, which is really meant to make you not want to do those things and go in those places. It's kind of giving you negative reinforcement, which forces targets to become isolated and not venture out very often. And that is the entire point of the targeting, is to take the person's life away, especially with the organized stalking, is to ruin a person's life and fill it with fear and anxiety and terror.
And you believe 50% of the American public that they might have been implanted. How did they get to so many people? What do you think?
That's the numbers that I'm getting. That's in my research. It's estimated 50% of Americans have already been implanted with the RFID technology. And I can tell you, when I've examined, as I said, over 95% of the people that I've examined, especially when looking at their hands, to the people that are listening that don't believe that this is true, and also it's happening to people that aren't targeted or even aware that they've been targeted. It's happening in a multitude of different ways. It can happen when you go in for an elective surgery, when you go in for minor dental work. It can also be done the way that it was done to me, covertly. Someone can just come into your home and implant you right there or remove you. It's done, and also it's believed that certain microchips, implants, can be installed, for lack of a better word, in the body through food, through vaccines. There's a host of possibilities where it's happening, but mostly I'm seeing this in my research, that it's happening in the hospitals when people go in for surgeries, and for elective surgeries in particular. While they're there, they get a lot more than they bargained for and come away with more than they ever hoped for. And for the people that don't believe or are unaware of this crime, I would challenge them to read my book, especially the chapter where I describe exactly where to find the scars on your body. And everyone I've looked at, every single person that I've come in contact with, nearly every single person, has the telltale, covert, tiny surgical incision scars, most of which at least the same number of people were not aware that they were there until I made them aware of them, that they're there. And in my book, I tell you exactly where to look for them. And I'm sure that some people will have their minds blown when they read the book, when they look exactly on their own body, exactly all the different spots I tell to look for, where you're going to find them. And I'm sure that some people will be terrified once they find those scars.
How many more implants do you think you have in you?
I have many, multiple. And
are you trying to get them all taken out?
I have to say I'd like to have them taken out, but there's so many. The one that they took out of my jaw, the part of my jaw is still numb.
Oh, God.
From removing it. I mean, to remove all of these implants, it was easy to put them in, but to remove them, you literally have to butcher your body to remove them all.
Yeah, I could see that. Now, are there times, Michael, that when you're trying to sleep, they do something and you can't sleep?
Oh, that's another sign of the electronic harassment, mind control, severe sleep deprivation. At the exact moment that you're drifting off to sleep, you will receive a strong electronic shock that gives you a feeling of panic and surprise, just as you're going to sleep, and then you get past that and relax again, and this is repeated over and over, and you're denied sleep. And then what happens is you continue to try to go to sleep, and then eventually, when you're allowed to go to sleep. That's when the induced artificial dreams are forced upon you. That's what happens to me.
I understand you have been in the CIA, but that's the Culinary Institute of America, right?
That's correct, yes.
So you're trained as that.
Yes.
How do you think they found you? I mean, you were right. You were in Hollywood. Do you think Hollywood was the way they found you? And again, you were telling us, because you're a loner and things like that may have singled you out. But somebody somewhere must have known you and turned your name into them.
It's possible. And the reasons can be, the reasons that people can be targeted are jealousy, hate, envy, just for the sport of it, and sometimes at random. But what's believed what's happening is that the ultimate perpetrators, the criminals at the very top of the food chain of this that are causing this crime, are believed to be, it's a collusion between multinational corporations, the black ops shadow part of the United States government, and the global criminal syndicate. It's kind of an alliance between these three. That's what's believed to be happening. So the criminal reach is extensive, and there is no aspect of society that this crime doesn't touch, especially if you receive the organized stalking. There is literally nowhere that you're going to go where you're not going to receive that kind of negative attention from people. The community intimidation, the stalking, but it's, and also I wanted to say that you look at where is this stuff coming from? Where is this technology, these classified technologies coming from? It's believed to be coming from the multinational corporations which are involved on a global scope in the design, manufacture, deployment, and use of sophisticated electronic weapon systems. And it's up to them how they want to distribute them to people. And from what I understand, the criminals, certainly at the community level, that have access to these classified technologies, these exotic electronic weapon systems, are given carte blanche as how they want to use them, and to how they want to torture the victims, because they are indeed being tortured right in their own homes, or wherever they travel. There's no escaping it.
Do you think they originally started with animals doing this?
It's possible. Well, you look at Jose Delgado with the bull implant. I believe that's where it may have started. But I mean, even the Manchurian Candidate, the novel written by Richard Condon,
yeah.
The political assassin, that was just a novel, but it was based on the real life MK Ultra CIA illegal mind control program that did use microchips on human subjects, and trigger words, and mind conditioning. And I'm sure it started on animals, but obviously that was a precursor to where it was going to end up on human beings. For the end goal is believed to be human enslavement and depopulation.
Michael, when we come back, let's find out exactly why you wrote the book, The Invisible Crime, of course, the warnings, of course, and some of the advice you're out to give so many people. And we'll open up. Okay, welcome back to Coast. Michael Fitzhugh Bell with us, of course, and we'll get to your calls and your stories as well. Michael, the book that you wrote, The Invisible Crime, were you trying to point out what happened to you, or is this a warning for people that something could be happening to them?
Well, it's both. It's my personal story, and it's meant as a tool, can be used as a tool to help explain to especially new targeted individuals, or people that feel they're being targeted. It can be a tool to explain what's happened to them to other people that are unaware of the crime. But also, it's really written to raise the awareness of this terrible crime that is real. And here's the thing, George. This crime is being scaled to the entire global population.
Who came up with this, Michael? Who came up with the idea to do this? What do you think?
What I believe ultimately it was the 1%, the people at the very top that are collecting all the data. What it is it's simply the most advanced weapon system ever created by mankind, and it involves every aspect of science, neuroscience, medicine, physics, psychology, mathematics, and all war techniques, tactics, and methods, and the sum of all human knowledge. That's what this crime is. It's simply the most advanced weapon system ever created by mankind.
If they programmed you to rob a bank, would you? Could you?
I don't know. Something extreme like that has not happened to me, but I believe it is possible to be either a programmed assassin or a programmed test subject. That's certainly possible. It hasn't, to my knowledge, that has not happened to me. But also, from what I understand, people that do have that kind of instruction thrust upon them may not even have any memory of it. But that has never happened to me. But it is certainly possible, George.
Have other targeted people come forward to you?
Oh, yes, I have. Every day I have people reaching out to me on my website and wanting to speak to me. And I've talked to, since I wrote the book, I've corresponded with and spoken to hundreds of people that have the exact same thing that is happening to me has happened to them, and they want answers, and my book provides those answers and helps a lot of people. And another reason that I wrote the book is because when this first happened to me, there were books on the subjects of organized stalking, electronic harassment, mind control, but there wasn't really one that existed that told the story of one person, and certainly didn't include all the medical evidence that I had to collect around the world, which cost a fortune to collect, and all the different technologies, recently declassified technologies, are all in the book. A book like that did not exist, and it would have been a tremendous help for me to have this kind of information. So that's why I created the book. It's really one of a kind in that respect.
I believe that. And has this played havoc with you having a relationship or interacting with people?
Completely. Just to let you know, the level of sophistication of these technologies allows the perpetrators, whenever I attempt to, even if I go on online dating and try to meet a young lady.
Go to paranormaldate.com, Michael.
That's what something like that I would probably be able to use. But what happens to me is I'll make contact with someone, but by the time I get to meeting them for the first date, the criminal group has already influenced them. They've already been, and they'll end up shunning me on this first meeting. I'll be shunned by them, and I'll also have small acts of harassment performed against me. That's how big the reach of this criminal syndicate is. They can get to every bank, every single person that I interact with that's sent to my home, whether it's the FedEx man, the UPS man, the postal person, the electrician, the plumber. Every single person that comes into my house has been, the criminal syndicate has already spoken to them, and when they come here, they perform small acts of harassment to let me know that they're part of the group.
Now, there will be some, Michael, who will say, come on, you're just being paranoid. How do you address that?
Well, I mean, it certainly sounds like that, and it's made to look like that. People that don't know anything about the crimes and how they work, there's very little evidence, except that, of course, if you have medical evidence like mine, which is overwhelming proof to me that something terrible has happened. But the organized stalking, it's so sophisticated that, and it's really one person. It's one person against an army. And when you have that army that are all part of the same team, it's very difficult to prove. And it leaves very little trace evidence. That's why in the book also I document everything, and I created techniques of filming the organized stalking in particular. That's something that's in the book that doesn't exist anywhere else. I had to create these techniques to film, because here's the thing, George. Especially in the store, I will have merchants shun me in the neighborhood, in the areas that I live. The community-based targeting, the organized stalking that I.
They don't want your business?
Lies are told about me in the community, and the merchants. It causes the merchants to shun me because they believe the lies, probably something along the lines of a child molester or a pedophile, something that would instantly make people, strangers, hate you. So those are the type of terrible lies that are being told about Target.
Or you're a shoplifter or something.
Something terrible, and then when you're in the store, they'll start performing small acts of harassment that you've been sensitized to bother you, to torture you, to terrorize you, and it's really especially organized stalking, is really a form of terrorism against an individual, sometimes involving hundreds or even thousands of people targeting a single person.
Did Roger Tolsis find you, or did you find him?
I found Roger, and he's been very instrumental in giving me information over the years, and told me a lot of things that I didn't know, and told me some of the basics of how this crime works, things that I wouldn't have found anywhere else, only through Roger. So he's been very helpful in that respect in giving me information, and told me a lot when I was, particularly in the beginning. This crime completely overwhelms the target, the victim, and turns their life upside down, inside out, and most people just really can't cope with it. And I have to say that you really, if you are a targeted individual, you really have to, you find ways to learn to adapt and cope with this overwhelming crime that's ongoing and constant and gaining momentum and intensity. It escalates over time.
All right, let's go to the phones as they line up for you. We'll go to Tom in Cleveland, east of the Rockies. Go ahead, Tom.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
I wanted to say, George, your show is fantastic.
Well, thank you, Tom. I appreciate that.
My question for your guest is, how do these entities get into the body? Excuse me. Are doctors indoctrinated, or is it done by the pharmaceuticals?
It's done, I believe, from what I understand, it's being done in hospitals by doctors that are part of the crime. It's really, it's an example of gross medical misconduct, completely illegal human experimentation, and when it's being done in elective surgeries or dental surgeries or dental visits, that's where these implants, these biomedical devices, can be initiated into the body. But for someone that's targeted, often will have a lot more than a person that is just a regular person. They may have some form of the technology. As I mentioned, it's estimated 50% of Americans already have been implanted without their knowledge, consent, or permission. But it's there's so many different ways that it can happen, through vaccines, through food, through the way it happened to me. People can come into your home in the middle of the night. They have things called Sandman teams, that a team of 3 people that will come into a home, and if it's a couple or even a family, and implant them, drug them and implant them when they're asleep. Jeez. And then when they wake up in the morning, they're none the wiser.
I wonder, have they ever been shot by somebody that they break into a home and, the person shoots them?
What happens is, from what I understand, people are usually watched, and they're under surveillance for quite some time before the abduction or the implanting actually takes place, and they know pretty much whatever a person is doing, when they go to sleep, when they wake up, when they're in, when they're out, and when they're asleep. All these things are carefully calculated, from what I understand, before any of these Sandman teams enter a home.
All right, let's go to Bernadette in Athens, Alabama now. Hi, Bernadette. Go ahead.
Good morning, George. This is your Bernadette that used to live in St. Petersburg.
Oh, there you are. You've moved.
I can't get you too well, but you are coming in loud and clear this morning.
You got it.
Let me get to this, okay? I believe that I am one of those 50% that he's talking about. Let me give it to you real quickly, okay?
Sure.
Because I think you got a lot of callers. Back in 2006, in the springtime, well, before that, I had gone to a hospital in Florida. And for 9 hours in the emergency room only, they charged me $20,945. So when I called them to ask them, I jokingly said, did you put the comma in the wrong place? How do you charge me that much? Okay, so they started sending me a bill. I'm kind of touched when it comes to my mental health, long-time child problems, okay?
Okay.
I asked them, I said, would you like for me to send you some anthrax? If you don't straighten out my bill, that's what you're going to do. FBI comes to my mother's house.
Oh, no.
Work, yeah, I know. I said something crazy, and I didn't know the severity of it. The FBI actually came to my mother's house in Tampa, Florida, while I was at work. She told them my daughter's had some issues all of her life. Okay, let me fast forward for you. In 2006, in September, I had to go into the hospital to have a tumor removed. Okay, it resulted in a complete hysterectomy. I developed a hernia, okay? I moved to Bainbridge, Georgia. I had, in March of 2008, I had the hernia repaired, supposedly. They put a mesh in me that I later found out was recalled. It was a barred mesh, and I've told you this on your radio program. Okay, let me get to the real point. And sometime around August or September, and this is on my Facebook page, I was sitting, when I moved around a lot. I moved to South Bend, Indiana. And I'm sitting one day, and I feel this itching between my leg, right in a part of my thigh. And so I started, and it was something hard. And my question is, I want to finish this, but my question is, how deep will they go into your body, and also, what does it look like? Anyway, I started scratching this thing, and I eventually worked it out of my leg.
Yeah, it's not very deep. Now maybe in your case, Michael, some of these are deep, but they're just primarily under the skin, aren't they?
That's correct. Unless there are major implants that have been installed into the ears, or the retinal implants in the eyes, or something in the brain. Generally, the biomedical devices that show up in all of my MRIs and ultrasounds are just beneath the surface of the skin.
And they're about the size of a grain of rice, aren't they?
They can be even smaller than that now.
Wow.
The technologies are doubling and tripling every 5 years, and they're getting smaller with greater capabilities.
All right, Tom has a text back in the L.A. studios for you. What do you have, Tom?
Hey, Michael, we have a text in from Samuel in Boston. He says, what has been your biggest fear in all of this, and are you at a point where you carry a weapon?
My biggest fear is that I believe that they have the ability to end my life at any time. So that was one of the reasons that I wrote the book, because I wasn't sure if the world was going to hear my story and hear what had happened to me. And I don't carry a weapon or have a weapon, really, because from what I understand, even further research, that oftentimes if people are under the
they make them turn the weapon on themselves.
If they're under the influence of mind control, the weapon can be misused against the person that owns it. So that's the reason I don't have one.
What do you use to kind of shield yourself? A Faraday cage? I think I saw a picture of your bedroom on our website. You've got aluminum all over the place.
That was an original an electrostatic egg that I used in the very beginning that Roger Tulsis created, and I used that for about 6 months before the criminals turned up the intensity of the attacks, and that was no longer really effective. It still worked a little bit, but not as well as it did in the beginning. I had that really just in the beginning of my targeting. Now I use, as I write in one of my chapters, I reveal all of my countermeasures, which are highly effective, short of completely eliminating the symptoms. I use neodymium rare earth magnets, which are so strong that their magnetic field is able to disrupt the frequencies, the incoming and outgoing frequencies from these biomedical devices. And I also use something called an earthing device, which actually grounds me against the electronic attacks and is able to really knock down about 80% to 90% of the directed energy attacks that are being thrust upon me at all times.
All right, we're going to come back, Michael, in just a moment and take final phone calls with you right here on Coast to Coast AM. We've got a great program for you tomorrow night, of course, with special open lines as well. And don't forget Sunday. I do the first Sunday of every month, as you know, with emerging artists. But Sunday, of course, being New Year's Day, we're going to have a special anniversary program, 14 years at Coast to Coast. Can you believe that, folks? 14 years already. Many more to go, but we're going to have a little party, and I want you to all come by. Our special guest tonight, Michael Fitzhugh Bell. His book is called The Invisible Crime. We're going to get to your calls in a moment. Michael, I'm sure the book is available on Amazon.com, and you must be pretty happy with it.
Yeah, it's well, I'm happy because I've a lot of people have responded positively to me, sending me emails on my website at www.invisiblecrime.com, and I believe I've helped a lot of people and given them some answers to a terrible situation which is really unexplainable for many people.
Let's go back to the phones. Cornelius in Louisiana to get us going here. Hi, Cornelius. Go ahead.
Hey, George and Michael.
Hi.
You have the name of an angel. I'm going to tell you something. You ought to call on the Lord Jesus and everything, and he'll help you too. But I was telling Tommy, my thing is, I hope he can get with L.A. Marzulli, and of course we lost Dr. Lear, and try to get those implants out or get a look at them where those people can help him, maybe in the alien abduction field. So I hope he can go to them. God bless you, George, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Cornelius. Yeah, we had a great doctor. He was a podiatrist who would take out implants, many of which he believes came from alien intervention, Michael. But gosh, had he still been alive, he'd be able to help you out quite a bit. There aren't a lot of doctors that specialize in removing them.
That's right.
And we need that. We need more and more of that as well. Do you find that this is more prevalent now than 10 years ago?
Oh, yes. I'm finding especially from the emails that I get from people and speaking to people, that this is spreading like wildfire across the nation, around the world. Also, too, I wanted to say that if we talk about the numbers for just a second,
Yeah.
it's estimated that 1% of the world is targeted. Out of a global population of 7.5 billion, that is 1% of that number is 75 million people.
But you
amount of number.
But you still think 50% of Americans have been
Yes.
targeted.
That's what has been, that I've researched to be true. A lot of people that know a lot more than I do. I also, in the book, I described that I met an ex-CIA agent that confirmed to me everything in my book to be true, but also added that in as much as my book exposes, it barely scratches the surface of what's really going on. It's barely the tip of the iceberg of what's really happening.
We have a text back in L.A. Tom's got it for us. What do you have, Tommy?
Michael, this is from Geraldine in Fort Worth, Texas. Do you have any recommendations for folks to protect against becoming a targeted individual?
I would have to say that you would just have to be extremely vigilant and know that this is a possibility, that the entire population is being scaled for this crime sooner or later. Every man, woman, and child, that is the goal. And so to be aware of that, to know that it's a possibility, and to think twice about having an elective surgery that's not necessary, because that's where many of the implantations are being performed, with people that go in for cosmetic surgeries, things that are elective that don't necessarily have to be done. I would avoid any of those kind of surgeries, and anything that involves general anesthesia would be advised to not have something like that done. That's certainly going to cut out a huge potential right there.
Gosh, Michael, how do I know I haven't been targeted and they're going to control my talk show so I will say things they want me to?
It's possible that the mind control techniques that are being used are so subtle and happen over a long period of time, so that it's not something that people that aren't aware that it could happen would even think that are possible. And many of the people that are listening to this show right now that may be part of the 50% that have already been implanted, they may not be experiencing anything that they can detect on any level that they would be aware of, but still, it is the possibility. I mean, the reason that it's being done is for a reason. It's being done for the end goal of human enslavement and depopulation. So, and influencing the way people think and their emotions and their urges can all be controlled now remotely by people. And it's also, I might add, highly illegal. It's completely illegal, and it's a war crime, and it is a crime against humanity.
Of the 50% you say that are targeted in the United States, how many of them, of the 50%, how many of them know that they've been implanted?
Very few.
All right.
Very few. Very few. I mean, the people that I have examined just in my travels around the world, people would ask me what my book's about, and I'll say, well, I'll show you. Let me look at your hand. And I'll make them aware of the scars. More often than not, I find the scars and I tell them, and I completely blow their minds by pointing these covert surgery scar incisions that they didn't even know that they had, and they're complete. And then I also have the reaction of people that are. It makes them frightened, and it makes them angry that this has been done to them without their knowledge, permission, or consent, all done with taxpayer money. But also, I also have had some people say, I was doing just fine until you told me the truth. until you told me about what's going on. Now I'm frightened. But people should be frightened. That's why I wrote the book. People need to be frightened. They need to be angry in order for this to be stopped, for things to be changed, for laws to be put in place to make things like this illegal. So that's really another point, another reason that I wrote the book.
Let's go to Sarah in Sacramento, California. Hi, Sarah. Go ahead.
Hi. Happy New Year and happy anniversary.
Thank you, Sarah.
Hi. I lived in Hollywood, in Los Angeles. My first apartment was in Hollywood. In 2003, I moved there. And a few months after I moved there, my landlord came to me and asked me if I would testify against some people in the building to try to get them evicted so they could raise the rent. It was a rent-controlled building. These were families. They'd been there 30 years, elderly people. I wouldn't do it. They then started trying to extort me, saying they were going to raise my rent $100 a month. I ended up finally getting a lawyer, as well as some of the other families in there. My apartment was bugged. I know people think this sounds crazy, but I would have conversations with my roommate. We would speak so quietly with the windows closed, talking like that, we could barely understand. And somehow they would find out. My lawyer advised me not to have any conversations regarding the case in that home. We found the manager of the apartment underneath my car one day. We think he was trying to put a tracking device under there. And the harassment just went on and on and on until I finally got out of there. And it was just the craziest thing. So, I don't think I have any implants, hopefully, thank God. But, yeah, I was definitely harassed. And also my roommate at the time, he would feel sick. He thought someone was targeting him with some sort of a device. He would see someone looking at him and reach in their pocket, and then he'd get this excruciating nausea and have to just leave whatever he was doing. And later that summer, he worked at a computer camp there at UCLA, and a young kid brought in his dad's Israeli spy gear catalog and found a device that's similar to one that they used for crowd dispersion.
Yeah.
The ultrasonic sound, and he thinks that's what they were using. We later found out these individuals had ties with Israeli mafia, and so I don't know if maybe your guest maybe had some sort of a run-in with his landlord there. But also with the RFID chip, I've heard that they can be implanted in the flu vaccines. I heard the avian flu vaccine, that those had been in there. I do not take any kind of vaccine. That's just me. But, no.
All right. Thanks, Sarah, for sharing that. Do you think they must be going crazy right now, Michael, knowing that you're talking on a national radio show about all this?
Yes, I still remember from our first show, and I remember you commented. You said your perpetrators must be absolutely incensed that you're going on the show talking about this, and you're absolutely right. And as a result of doing an interview like this one, I will undoubtedly.
You're going to pay the price.
Oh, I'll pay a price for that. Yes, I'll be punished severely for this.
Let's go to Mark in Truman Lake, Missouri now. Hi, Mark. Thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Good evening, George. Good evening, Michael.
Hi there.
Good evening.
I had a friend, an acquaintance, a friend that his story is so similar to yours, and he had problems. He couldn't go through, for example, a department store door that had a security check on it, or a metal detector at the courthouse or at the airport, or a laser, a speed detector from the highway patrol, the laser, the speed gun. All those kinds of things would set him off and give him a hard time. And he dealt with it for so long, it drove him nuts. He could not hold a job. He lost his job, and he was basically on the streets. And we got him the outfit here in town, and they helped him a whole lot. And Michael, you're doing a good thing by talking about this and by getting it in a book and working on this. And don't let it get to you, son. You get yourself all better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. That was very nice of him, Michael.
Yes, that was very kind. Thank you.
How many people running around with this? People think that they're nuts, that they're off their rocker. Does that happen a lot?
Oh, yes, more often than not. And also, too, you're going to run up against the perpetrators, which will automatically discount you and discredit you. The people that know about it are going to be the first that are going to say that you're crazy. The other thing I wanted to say was the amount of perpetrators. For every one target, there are 20 perpetrators. So 20% of the global population is in on this crime, that is part of it. 1 out of every 5 people know about the crime and participate in it on some level. That's a huge number.
Well, it sure is. Okay, let's go next to Loretta in Modesto, California. Good morning, Loretta.
Good morning, sir.
Good to have you with us.
What I'm calling in regards to is, I understand that earlier he stated he had something similar to amnesia. Was he ever able to maybe go and buy items and get home and not remember any of it?
I think he forgot it all. Go ahead, Michael.
Well, I remember bits and pieces of my. I had several abductions, as I describe in the book. I remember vividly the portions of the abductions between the druggings of whatever they were giving me. I believe it was scopolamine or devil's breath, which gives the victim complete amnesia. But between the druggings is the moments that I remember. And I was one time it was for a week, another time it was for several days. There were several, and then there was a couple of times that what I described before as Sandman teams of a covert military team that came into my apartment and performed surgeries there as well. So it happened, but the amnesia was as a result of the drugging. I have not experienced amnesia that I'm aware of through any kind of mind control. But of course, it may have happened and I just simply wasn't aware of it. That's how subtle and how effective and how frightening these classified technologies are.
Let's go to our first-time caller, Bob in Oregon. Bob, go ahead.
Hi, how you guys doing?
Good, Bob. Thank you.
I'd like to know, you said that you had all that medical done abroad. How much have you spent trying to figure out what this is?
That's a great question. I'll tell you.
And insurance doesn't cover it, does it?
No. The information that I collected in my book, all of which I think the book only cost $10 or $11, but what it cost me to write the book and to move 14 times in 9 years, it cost me, traveling around the world collecting medical evidence, over $600,000 out of my lifetime personal savings. But all that information that took me that much money to acquire is all in the book. So I just wish a book like that was available to me when I was first targeted. It would have saved me a lot of time and energy and money. And it's really not available anywhere else. I haven't found any other book that's like it.
Was all of this effort worth it, Michael?
Well, I believe it is, because people that were unaware of this crime until I wrote the book or I done an interview like this one, they may or may not have been aware of it, but people need to be aware of it in order to stop this crime from continuing to escalate to the point where the entire human race is enslaved, and perhaps even things like a Holocaust or a mass genocide. These are believed to be end goals of this weapon system, of these classified technologies of the top 1% of the world. So I believe that writing the book is the least I can do to tell the world my story and to make people aware of this reality, which is coming sooner or later to every single person on the planet. That's what the plans are.
All right, my friend. Michael, you take care of yourself. Stay in touch with us, okay?
Terrific. Thank you so much, George. It was great to be back. Thank you so much.
You have a good new year, and you stay safe. If this is happening to you indeed, they are monitoring you every second of the day, so please be careful. Don't forget our Friday night show. It's going to be a little spooky, plus we'll have open lines on Coast to Coast AM. Glad to have you with us. And then the anniversary show, New Year's night on Sunday, January 1st. For Dan Galante, Tom Danheiser, Lisa Lyon, Lex Lonehood, Sean Ladouceur, Stephanie Smith, Chris Boros, and George Knapp, I'm George Norrie, somewhere out there on Coast to Coast AM. We'll see you on our next edition. Until then, be safe, everyone.